Hey folks, going to do something different today. So what I'm going to do is some Draw Steel by MCDM. So it's that time of year, right, where all the new role-playing games come out. Um, Basically, I'm very much committed to Tales of the Valiant as my 5e replacement, but there are other systems out there that scratch different itches, right? There's Draw Steel, which has come out now for MCDM. That's definitely a more tactical type of game, right? And as someone my age growing up, tactical games were big things, right? War games and stuff like that that were very complicated were big. So I'm into this. I'm into trying this for sure. This is heavily inspired by 4E for those who don't know, which was also very tactical. Starfinder also came out. I haven't put up the coin for that one yet, but I'm sure I will. So it's only a matter of time. So for right now, we're going to go into Draw Steel. Excuse me. And this video is basically for the people who are going to be playing with me so they can start to wrap their heads around the new rulebook. I want to try and give a quick summary of how the system works, and then how to create a character. Maybe I'll do future ones on combat and that kind of crapola. But for right now, this is just starting from the beginning. So we're going to start with the basics. They even call it the basics in the book itself. And let's kind of start going through this and noting the differences between this Draw Steel and 5e, TOV, whatever is your D20 of choice, right? So to start with, of course, you got to rename the characteristics because why not? So might, agility, reason, intuition, presence is basically the replacement for strength, dex, intelligent, wisdom, and charisma. Constitution is out. No constitution here. It's just rolled into strength, I suppose. So, easy enough to start with. Okay, so this is a D10 system, right? D10 system plus some modifier. So what does that mean? That means instead of rolling a D20 to hit or to do your skill checks or whatever, you are going to be rolling 2D10, right? And adding it up. So once you add it up, your result is going to be in one of three tiers. And when you roll it up with the 2D10, there might be some modifier added onto it. You'll see as we go. Like obviously with some sort of like a strength check, you're probably rolling 2D10 plus your strength, right? So, sure. So here, and this is level set that they've gotten rid of the whole your strength is from a say 0 to 20. Now your strength is just +1 or 0 or +5 or whatever it might be, right? They're only showing the bonus that you get, and the old 1 to 20 rating system for all those scores are gone. All right, at any rate, so you're taking your 2D20, 20 on the brain, 2D10, rolling it, adding a modifier if necessary. They'll go into three tiers. If you're adding up to, I don't know why I put a 9 there. I don't know. Boop, don't look. There you go. Okay, so typo. If the addition of the 2d10 is less than 11, less than or equal to 11, it's basically a fail of whatever you're trying to do. Now, I'm going to asterisk that for a second because one thing about this system is that you always hit. Okay? Like if you're spinning for combat, there's no such thing as a miss, right? You're always going to do something. Right? Now, it might be hitting for a small amount of damage if this was a combat roll, but yeah, you're going to do something. So a fail might be you do a little bit of damage and something else. Or if you're doing, like if it's a skill check, it might very well be a fail in this case or something like that. But basically, tier 1 is the worst result that you can get when you spin your 2d10. If you do a 12 through 16, then it's a kind of sort of pass, right? Again, you always hit. This was a combat roll, so you're just going to do a bit more damage than your tier 2. If you're doing some sort of skill check or something similar, you might still pass it now, but with some negative consequence potentially. Maybe you climbed the wall successfully, but the guard saw you. Just to make that up. Tier 3, which is 17 or greater, is the best. That's what you want. That's what you get to succeed for your hits or whatever. If you hit with this, you do the most damage possible. There is something called Bane or Edge, which is basically the equivalent of advantage or disadvantage or advantage. And in this case, you get to spin, you get to add an additional +2 or -2, depending on whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. If you have double Edge or double Bane, which you can do, then you would go up or down a tier depending on whether it's the positive or the negative. So if you have a double Edge and you spun a tier 2, then you get a tier 3 result. Okay, and if you have a conflict of Banes and Edges, then you basically balance them out, right? If you have 2 Edges and 1 Bane, that nets out to be 1 Edge, and you would get +2. So, when we're going through this, and as I show some parts of the book as we're kind of knocking through here, the bottom line is you are always spinning this 2d10 with a possible modifier or modifiers, and you're ranking by tier. All right, I gotta move my head. So, hero tokens. So this is basically the equivalent of either you want to call it inspiration from 5e, or if you want to call it luck from Tales of the Valiant, right? This feels like a little bit of both, right? With inspiration, right? You in 5e, you could get advantage on a roll, and the DM would have to give it to you. With luck, you would have, and Tales of the Valiant, you would have a pool of luck for each character, and then every time that they missed, they would add a luck with the asterisk that you only can get 1 luck per round, right? So sure, with this is a little bit of a combination. So with this one, with these hero tokens, it is a resource that the entire group shares. So everybody gets to feed off of the same hero tokens, right? So if you have 4 players in your group, you would start with 4 hero tokens, and then the players can pull from them as they wish. The DM, if someone does something really awesome, you can give them an extra token, just like you would inspiration, to add to the pool. And what you can use them for is either 2 surges, which we'll get to a little bit later. You could pass a failed save. You could reroll basically a skill check. And you could also use 2 to regain some stamina, which is basically hit points. And we'll get to that in a bit. So that's what these are good for. You're supposed to reset your hero tokens at each game session. They optionally say you could not do that. To me, that would be like giving everyone an inspiration at the beginning of each gaming session if I was a 5e, or giving someone a bunch of luck throughout the group. So I probably wouldn't play that way. I would probably give you a bunch of hero tokens, and then I would probably, try to remember to throw you one. It's really interesting with these systems, because I will tell you that as a DM, I hardly ever remember to give out inspiration. I have enough things to do that I just seem to forget it, right? And by the same token, with the luck system for Tales of the Valiant, a lot of times people seem to tend to forget their luck, but at least I don't have to feel guilty about it because I didn't forget it. So whatever that's worth, right? Let me move my head back and I can go to the next. So there's also a concept in here called victories. So basically, victories are one or more combat challenges that you completed, right? So if you win a combat or you did something really tough, I don't know, you convinced the king to send the armies to go east. I don't know. But you can get a victory. DM's discretion might give you more than one victory if something was really, really tough. Kind of feels that's a rare thing. And then when you do a respite, which is like a super, I guess you can call it a long rest, but as you'll see, it's like a super long rest. So you convert these victories into experience points, and those experience points then level up your character. So there's a blurb in here that if you don't want to use experience points, you could do the, the checkpoint and do it that way. Yeah, I think as time goes on, I prefer experience points. Checkpoints just seems to, if it's a dedicated group, I don't mind checkpoints. I can just figure it out. But if you're doing something where people are coming and going like I am, I gotta just do experience points. That's just me. A bunch of other stuff just to kind of give background on terms and stuff like that. There's something called heroic resources, which powers your abilities. So we'll get to that more when we get to characters. So this is like another point ability that your characters will have that you will spend to do your awesome abilities. Just so you know. There is recovery, which I mentioned up over there by hero tokens. So you can spend, your character gets some recovery to start with, right? And when you spend a recovery, you'll get back 1/3 of your stamina, which is your hit points, right? So, yeah. So you kind of can think of it as having, like, I wrote up a character. I haven't finished doing it, but I did one here that I was starting to play with on paper before I fiddled with this. And this character is a first level character, an elementalist, and they had 18 stamina, so 18 hit points, and they had 8 recoveries. So if a recovery is equal to 1/3 of your hit points, 1/3 of my hit points is 6. So if I have 8 recoveries and each recovery is 6 hit points, that's 48 hit points I can heal myself. On top of the 18, I have 18 plus 48 hit points. So that feels like 66 hit points, kind of, sort of. But you have 18, right? And then you can keep chucking to it, right? And that's your thing, right? You can spend the hero tokens to get additional stamina, right. And then you do your thing, right? You can also do what's called a respite. I mentioned that earlier. So a respite is a long rest, which is like a 24-hour period. And when you do that, you get your recovery back and your stamina back. And all your victories are converted into experience. So really, your 24-hour rest, it should be a lot more rare than it might be in a 5e system, right? So they shouldn't be happening as often. But as a first level character having some 60 odd hit points, yeah, sure, I get it, right? So I know victories are converted into XP. I haven't stumbled enough through combat to see if victories could be used for something else. Otherwise, yeah, I'm just going to take a quick search of the document while I'm sitting here to kind of wonder. But, oh, what was that? Yeah, never mind. So yeah, so it is what it is, right? I, yeah, let's go to the next slide. I'm kind of confused of why you have victories that just give them XP and just say you got one towards XP. So there must be something in the rules, I would hope, that you use victory else for. But because you can see, I'm still kind of wrapping my head around the rules and trying to figure out all these different systems. So, all right, building a character. So on whatever page it is, I think I took a snippet of this, I think it's like page 16, they give you this outline of the steps you need to do your character. I'm going to kind of try and summarize this a little bit. So yeah, think about what you want, and then we're going to go on from there. So your character to start with is going to be size medium, have a speed of 5 squares, and a stability of 0. I mean, we can all guess what stability does, but how you actually use it in the game, different video. So the first thing you're going to do, if I'm going by what these guys are telling me, is you're going to pick your ancestry. So your ancestry, no problem, is you're going to get what's called a trait, right? And you're going to get to purchase, you buy the rest of your traits. So let me kind of give you an example here in the book, right? So this is one of the ancestries you could be. You could be a devil. So as you can see here for devils, there is a signature trait, which is the one that every devil gets, which in this case is Silver Tongue, and you can read it and do it there. And then you can purchase a number of other traits to customize your ancestry. So in this case, you get 3 points, in which case you could pick which one of these traits you want. You know, whether you wanted a barbed tail or a hell sight or glowing eyes or some other wings or whatever, right? So you get a choice. And this happens a lot, you know, more than once during this whole thing, where you're basically given a bunch of abilities. I put abilities in air quotes, but you're giving a bunch of powers, whatever you want to call it, and sometimes you're told to choose one of these, or you can spend points, and you got to make choices to customize your character. So no problem. You get one trait, you buy the rest, and that's that. So the next one that you got to do is you got to figure out your culture. So this is kind of part of background. They break up your background into 2 groups. One is called culture, one is called careers. Culture is broken down into 4 other subgroups just because, you know, sure, why not? Your language, your environment, your organization, and your upbringing. Okay, so for your language, you get whatever culture, the language of your culture, and I guess it should really be your culture is kind of your ancestry. I guess the default is. So I'm sorry, I'm rambling on here. So like if you look, if I can get to the dang thing, hold on, Yeah. So what they do here for your ancestry, they recommend which cultures you want to take. But if it turns out that you were really raised somewhere else or whatever it might be, you can mix and match any way you want. So that's why I kind of stumbled there a second ago, right? But basically, yeah. So you get to pick the language of your culture, which might be your ancestry if you follow the charts that I just kind of briefly showed here a second ago. And you get the Zoop, and you get Kalian, whatever. That's basically common. So you basically get common and whatever language you grew up with. For your environment, you get a skill, and you get you get an edge, right, +2 on any tests or checks that relate basically to your culture in so many words. For your organization you pick, you get another skill. For your upbringing you get another skill, right? Is what it basically comes down to, it seems. So yeah, I guess I should go to skills just real briefly, right? So basically, I mean, the background is like on page, whatever page it's on. Zoop. 53 it looks like, and you got to jump all the way to 254 to figure out your skills. So yeah, this is kind of like this when you're rolling up a character, you are kind of jumping around the book a bit. So your skills are all the way back here, and I don't know if you can read this, but basically it's saying, hey, right? Here are your crafting skills, blah, 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 blah. Here's your exploration skills, blah, blah, exploration skills, blah, blah, blah. So you want to be good at like gymnastics or lifting or jewelry or whatever, depending on what environment, organization, or upbringing you would get, then you would get that skill, which means you're good at that, which means you'll get an edge on your checks when you're doing those type of things. So basically a +2 bonus. Okay. Then you got to go for your career, right? So your career is basically what you did before you became an adventurer. Okay, fine. So you get some more skills depending on what you picked for your career. You'll get like 2 or 3. Maybe you'll get a language. You'll get renown, basically some rating which tells you how well you're known. You get a wealth score, how wealthy you are. They don't track gold pieces or anything like that. But I can tell you just get a wealth score, and you're a 1 on wealth. You can afford going to the inn. You get project points, maybe. Like if you're crafting, if you picked an artist, then you get some more points that you can spend towards your artistry stuff that you might be doing. If you pick a different career, like, I don't know, bookkeeping, you might not get project points for that. You get a perk. Again, you're jumping to another part of the book, which is on page 227. And this is kind of sort of like a skill or anything else, right? But it is a little different. If you go to 227, right, you can see these are the perks for crafting. So you can see here you might be an inspired artist. When you make a project roll from a skill using the think, you could spend half a hero token, blah, 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 blah. So it's going to give you some ability that you can use situationally. And you also get an incident. So this is basically, why did you ever leave that job? Right? And become an adventurer. And it's like a background thing. And if you look on the actual, like here, if you're like an agent or an aristocrat, you can pick from this table what your incident was, and of course you can work with your DM to pick one, to make a custom one if you wanted to, and it's just basically a background. So once you do that, you can finally get to your class and subclass, right? So this is pretty short for something so important, of course. But basically, you get to choose a whole bunch of abilities, right? So there is a number of subclasses, classes. Let's start with classes. So there's, what do we got? We got Censor, Conduit, Elementalist, Fury, Null, Shadow, Tactician, Talent, and Troubadour? Sure, Bard. So each one of these kind of sort of fits the corresponding 5e class, but maybe not, right? they definitely tweaked these in various ways, right? So let's looking in here, like this is kind of the paladin, kind of the cleric, kind of like a wizard sorcerer thing, barbarian, yeah, kind of like an anti-psionic guy, thief, what do they call them? Dang it. The fighters that like are really good at directing people and giving them buffs, whose name I can't remember right now. Talent, which is like Sonic's, and this guy's basically a bard. Now I say all that ish, right? They did tweak these, so like they're not a copy paste of a cleric or a copy paste of the bard. So again, I'm kind of painting with broad strokes here, right, on what they do. Don't think that they're just a copy paste. So you will pick one of those. Each one of those has a subclass that you will pick, which is a slightly different flavor for each one. And then you get to pick abilities. So why don't we do one here? Let's do this guy. Right, so here's he looks very paladinly. Sure. Let's go through here. So what will happen is when you pick this, you get... We've only gotten so deep into what all these different potencies and stuff are, but we'll get to it. You're going to round out the rest of your characteristics. This guy has a might and presence of 2, and then you can choose one of these arrays to finish out your abilities. These potencies we'll get to in a second, but basically there's different levels of this. In this case, your presence, blah, 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 blah. You get a starting stamina, hit points. How much stamina, hit points you gain going forward. The number of recoveries, heals. And then, hey, you get some skills, right? Now, once you do that, you'll see here that you get a bunch of first level features which you'll have to read through and document, right? Just stuff that you can do, right? And you'll start to see things like this from time to time. And these are either it's like an attack or it's a, some other ability that you might have. And you're going to see that in this case, there's going to be something here with some keywords. Is it magic? Is it a melee attack? Is it a ranged thing? You're going to see the range. If they're, you're going to see how many targets it does. And you can see here which action you can use for it, right? I'm trying to remember the names of the 3 actions in this, but basically it has there's like, I think there's movement, which is movement, maneuver, which is kind of like a bonus action, and then you have your normal action that you use for attacking or whatever. So in that sense, it's very 5e like, but it's going to be used very similarly. But yeah. So in this case, that's what this does. You would use this as a bonus action. And again, I'm pointing with broad strokes. Someone's going to throw stones at me for calling it a bonus action, probably. But it is what it is. And then you read what it says and you do it, right? And you get all this stuff for free. And, you just got to read it all. Right? Again, you have the following ability. You have a faithful friend. You have this grave speech. And again, it's just telling you all the stuff that you get for this guy. And then eventually you're going to get down to here where you get into your signature abilities and your heroic abilities, which I'm kind of talking about here. So your signature abilities is basically ones that you can use without cost. If you want to think of them as your cantrips, I guess you can, because I'm a wizard forever. But yeah, I mean, these are things that you can use unlimited times, right? And you're going to see something like looks like this, where you see this thing here. It has the name of the ability. It's going to have those keywords. This is a melee weapon, magical area attack. Well, that's a lot of keywords. You use the main action. There you go. They call it main action. I really like they call it main action because like in 5e they just call it action, and then you have action, bonus action, and then like what, your movement action, like you move action, like you're using action too loosely. So you have your main, your I don't know, whatever, forget. That's your main action. It's your action. So anyway, you do your stuff, and then you'll see down here, right? They have those tiers where if you spawn less than 11, you do 2 damage and you get to push the guy 1 space. If you do kind of the medium tier 2, you're doing 4 damage, pushing 2. If you do the best tier 3, you're doing 6 damage and pushing 3. So that's going to be your signature abilities, and then you're going to get into your heroic abilities, right? So with this, right, you're going to have to do a couple things. One is, you can see here, I think you can see here, right, heroic resource. So you have a pool of points that you are using to power your non-cantrip, non-free abilities, right? Now, just to make this confusing, if I back up here, somewhere it's here, give me a second. They have a different name for each of these pools, because why not? Here they are. Your heroic resource cost, right? Load this up. So this is your points that you get to spend for your cool abilities. For each class, they call it a different thing. So if you're doing a sensor, which is what we're looking at, it's called Wrath. Wrath is your points that you're using to power your cool abilities. If you decide to pick a talent, it's not called Wrath. It's called Clarity. So keep in mind, different classes are going to use different name. That's basically for the same thing. The points that you use to power your person. Okay. Back to the sensor. Right? So if I go back to this guy here, you'll see here, there's a section here, and you'll always see this towards the beginning. You'll see Wrath. Right? So with Wrath, you can see you're going to start with, at the start of your turn, at the start of your turns during combat, you get 2 Wrath to start every round. And then you'll see you gain another Wrath if basically the first time each combat round a creature judged by you, see judgment below, we're not going to read that, does damage, you'll gain a Wrath. And then the first time each combat round you deal damage to a creature judged by you, you gain a Wrath. So you're going to get a couple of these points every turn, and then each class has a different way, depending on what goes on during combat, that you might get additional points. In this case, Wrath for this paladin-y guy, right? So you got to keep them, you got to watch for that during your combat. While you're in combat, am I getting additional, whatever the points are called for you, to power your special abilities when it gets to be your turn? So pay attention. All right. As a DM, you better pay attention anyway. We don't like it. All right. So going down a couple of pages here, wherever I was, boop, boop, boop. Okay, yeah. So your signature abilities, which we read here a second ago, is the freebies, right? You can just use them without cost, right? But hopefully you've got enough points, Wrath, whatever it might be called, to do your other cool abilities. So the original point of this video, even though you see I'm going off on some tangents here, is that, hey, when you build this guy, you're going to have to pick your abilities. So like here, let's see here, heroic abilities. You call upon a number of heroic abilities, all bound to your wrath. Choose one of the heroic abilities from the following options, each of which costs 3 wrath to use. So when you're building your character, you're building your character, your first level, right? And there's only 10 levels for your characters in the system, by the way. So your first level, you get to pick one, at least for this. I think it's the same for all of them, but I can't say I've read them all, right? You're going to pick, I believe, one heroic ability that's going to cost you 3 for this level. And you'll have to pick which one you want to use, right? So here's like, you want Shield of Faith? Fine, you pick that as one of your cost 3 heroic ability. And then you've got that. When you go to level 2, it's going to have a different set of level 2 abilities that you'll get to choose from, right? And level 3 and level 4, so on. So I don't think you really meant to. I don't know there's a rule against it, but I guess you could if you wanted to, but I haven't read that far. I guess if you're level 2, you could still pick a level 1 ability, maybe. I have no idea. But the idea is that you're probably picking more powerful abilities as you go along. You probably wouldn't want to do that, but maybe there's some reason that you would, role-playing, etc. But regardless, right. So to use this ability, and here the 3 are what? Shield of Faith, Driving Assault, and whatever the other one is. There's a couple here. There's Guides, Punish, and Defend, and Repent. So you got to pick one of those, and that's your ability for your character. You don't get to change them every time you long rest or something like that. Of DM's discretion, of course, but that's not the intention of the game. And then, sure, you go and pick it. There is a section in here that says, oh, if you don't like your ability, you think it sucks, you could switch it, talk to your DM, because, yeah, you might find out later, this is really dumb, I'm going to pick something else. Dumb is bad, but maybe I shouldn't say the word dumb. It doesn't fit your situation. You also get to pick a level 5 ability. I shouldn't say level 5. Cost 5 ability, right? So here it's Arrest, Behold, Face of Justice, etc. That will cost 5. In this case, it's Wrath, or whatever the point numbers are called. And you'll get one of those, and you'll get better ones as you go on, but that's what the deal is. So going back to this, you're going to have Heroic Resources, which powers your cool abilities. That those points are called differently for each class. And then for the cool abilities that you got to pay for the heroic ones, you will be choosing from a list. And you might have to choose for the signature ones as well. Again, you have to read those classes and see. I can't say I've read all 12 classes. Okay, that's a long amount of talking for just that little bit, but it is your class and subclass. And yeah, I mean, obviously you'll be allowed to pick a subclass too, and that gives you certain things. You'll read through and figure it out. This is high level stuff. All right, so abilities. Okay. So this is, I kind of touched a little bit on this when I was going through the characters a second ago, right? You saw the abilities in the class, right? I'm going to show it to you in a second, right? You got abilities like this one, right? And basically that's going to have those keywords, magic, melee, whatever. It's going to tell you the type of action you got to use that ability on. It's going to have a distance. It's going to say what area of effect it has. When you're picking it, so that's probably something to show. You're going to have to figure out, you have to do math. Sorry. right? So let me just pull this up to show you when I say you got to figure out ability roll and damage and stuff. So if I look at this, here's a sensor ability, and here let's look at every step death, right? You can see the damage for this is 5 plus P, your psychic damage, right? Or the psychic damage is the type, right? But P is going to be your presence, your charisma, right? So it's really 5 plus your presence charisma score is going to be in psychic damage. So if you have a presence score of 2 and you spawn 11 or less on the every step is death, then you do 5 plus 2 damage. 5 plus 2 psychic damage. Okay. And so forth. So on your character sheet, you're going to have to probably have that math for you. As you level up, if you increase your presence, you will have to go back through all your abilities and increase the damage to those corresponding abilities, right? Same thing with, you can see over here to the right, right? Here's Behold Shield of Faith, where basically you're doing that plus might or strength, right? So it's going to do 3 plus M for an 11 or less, and so forth. Now, this can get more complicated, of course, because why not? And I'll show you an example. There's also something in here called potency. So, and you got to figure that out too. And it mentioned it when we created the class a few minutes ago, what that might be, right? So let's look at the example they have in the book. And I'm going to look over here on this ability here. So your character is going to have a potency of weak, average, strong. And this is page 74. So to show you when we did sensor a second ago, right, you can see for sensor, your strong potency is just your presence score. Your average potency is presence -1. And then weak is -2. So to start with, you have a presence of 2. So your strong, average, weak potency is going to be 210 if you're first level, right? Okay. So getting back to over here. So then what's going to happen is, hey, they spun something. In this case, this ability is going to do damage plus your intuition, holy damage. But then you see here, there is another ability, right, where it says, hey, you could be prone, or you might be prone and you can't stand unless you do a save or end it or something, okay? So the bottom line here is you have to take a look at your, in this case, it looks like it would be your agility. So, or the creature's agility, whoever got hit, right? So you do the power roll, and then you look at this, right? Let's say you spawn an 11. So you're in the tier 1 thing here. Then you're going to say, okay, you took that much damage. But then if the agility is less than your weak score, then they're prone. Well, your weak score at first level is probably 0, unless they have a negative agility, which I don't even know if that's possible. But if it is, fine. If not, it ain't going to happen, right? And then if your average is 1 for first level, and they have, I suppose, an agility of 0, then you knock them prone, and so forth, right? So again, as they show here, you're going to have to convert this into this on your character sheet, if you're writing it on a character sheet or on your VTT, if it's not automatically doing the math for you, you're going to have to do that math for every ability. And then if any of your ability scores increase or improve, you will have to go back through all your skills and adjust them accordingly. Ugh. So that is, dealing with your ability. So you got to figure out your ability rolls, your damage, your potency, all that kind of stuff, as you're filling out your character sheet and doing all this fun stuff. Just some other miscellaneous stuff. A critical hit on this is a 19 or 20. Don't forget you're rolling 2d10 and adding them together. So yeah. Also, you get what's called surges or buffs, right? And I haven't run into them too much. They're probably buried in the abilities. But if you took the Bard-like character, he might give you surges as opposed to, some other bonus. So it's like another resource counter you got to track, right? So you're going to have surges you're going to track. And with the surges, you can do a couple things. You can, don't forget, you can use your inspiration-like stuff, or from the previous thing, the, oh, dang it, whatever the heck it's called. Yeah, that stuff. Nope, don't do that. I don't want to accidentally turn things off. Go back. Hero tokens, thank you. Hero tokens can be used to give you extra surges. Okay, I was here. So you could use hero tokens to give you surges. Your character, your friends might give you some surges, or your other abilities might give you surges. Yay, you. So you can use 3 surges to do extra damage to one creature that you hit based on your highest characteristic score. So say you're that paladin-like guy, the censor, and you're best at might, you would do an extra probably 2 damage by spending 3 surges. Or you can use 2 surges to increase the potency on one target. So if, say you spun a average and you want it to be a strong, say they failed the average test, right over here, they failed this one, and you don't want them just to be prone, you want them to be prone and can't stand, right? Then you could spend 2 potency to increase, it looks like, the level of their fail, right? And if you hit multiple targets, you can do this multiple times, it sounds like, but you have to spend that 2 surges each time. The surges are lost at the end of combat. I don't know what I did there. Oh, that's really weird. Boop. Okay, good. Sorry. All right. Almost done. This is good because it's been yapping almost 50 minutes. All right, so kits. So now you're getting towards the end here. Once you figured all that stuff out for your character sheet, kits are basically your stuff, right? Your weapons, your armors, whatever it might be. In this game, they're trying to simplify it and have multiple kits, and you're not doing individual items like you would in a 5e system. So, you'll get a weapon and you'll get a bonus, different bonuses for speed or disengaging or this or that. And you can see here, he's an arcane archer, and you get various bonuses for different things, bonuses for distance or range or disengaging and all kinds of, and you get a signature ability that you can use with it, because sure, you need more of these. And yeah, you go from there, right? So that's going to be your equipment, right? But you're not tracking individual equipment. This, you're not tracking how many hours you have, how many gold pieces you have. It does away with that minutia for other things to track. Okay, so that's what your kit is. You can have complications, which is optional rules. It's kind of like flaws. I'll put that in air quotes. It's just more for your background, I think. I don't know if it really gives you any real disadvantage per se. And then if I'm following the original list here of the character sheet, the way of spinning up a character, that's on page 17-ish. Then they have some free strikes, which is basically, hey, like, I mean, if you're like almost like your unarmed strikes, right? You get like a melee and ranged way of attacking. So you got to make sure you write that down. I mentioned all the other details, and you're done. You know, at least doing the character sheet part. So, I hope this was good for you. Again, this might have been more for me, just to make sure I understood what the heck I was doing, right? This stuff was pretty straightforward, but it was nice to write it down to understand what those key terms were, right? When you get into the building your character, there is a lot of jumping around the book. It is what it is. A lot of systems do it that way. I kind of feel there's less of that in TOV, but I've done enough systems that knowing that jumping around the book is usually the way you have to do it, sadly. So yes, you're getting a lot of skills. You're getting a lot of different levels of points. Again, we didn't really get into how all these things interact, right? Your class and subclass is going to give you a whole bunch of other abilities, that some of which you could use free, some of which you're going to have those custom named heroic resource points for. Some of them you have to choose, some of them you just get them all, and then you'll get the things about abilities and buffs and so forth. So, having read all this, what do I think about this so far? Good question. You're definitely, if I had, and again, I haven't played it yet. I did get the packets as a you know, the test packets, but I didn't really play them at the time. I had my head too deep in other things. But overall, it's interesting. I kind of feel, you know, having watched Critical Role play Daggerheart, it's definitely more cumbersome than Daggerheart for sure, but I can feel a little bit similar to it in that this does seem a way of trying to make the story flow a little more, right? Like if I'm watching Daggerheart, and I guess I'll play it someday, but I've certainly can tell it's probably not for me. Like it's definitely a more story-based system. Maybe this one will fit more in between for me, right? Like I feel like if you're not going to have a map mercer or someone really good at doing narratives for your group, that Daggerheart could end up being kind of a meh system. Whereas with this one, yes, you have some of the similarities of that, but if you're really in the combat, there's a lot of choices and stuff here, right, to allow you to do combat definitely in a different way. And it's interesting, right? Like I'll do another video maybe on combat, but with that, it's like each side is kind of, again, similar to Daggerheart to a degree, is like each side is taking kind of turns, right? So, and you can decide as a group who I believe goes first or second and so forth, right? And that was from one reading, so if I said something wrong there, forgive me. So you get a lot of ways of trying to figure out as a group how to do these synergies together, and as your group is together longer and longer, it will get better. And definitely you can work better as a team possibly with this system and do some really cool combat tactical stuff, which is what I'm kind of looking forward to with this, is see how my players and myself, if I play the characters, can be creative, right? I know watching Daggerheart, that felt like a minus to me. I know during one point of the Umbra campaign, one of them, I think it was Marisha, kind of said, I haven't done anything, right? As a quick and, frustration, because, one character was going on the group and then it was passing to the DM because they spun something poorly, and then it goes back to the group, and then maybe Matt spending fear to get it back, or whatever that system works like. It feels like you could just be sitting there twiddling your fingers a bit and never getting a turn. With this system, everyone gets a chance during a round of combat, but the players can decide who's going first, second, third, last. And that's how I kind of remember it from my reading, but I'll do a video on it. So it might be a go-between between like a more combat-y Daggerheart than Daggerheart. That's painting really broad strokes for sure. But the fact that you don't really have spells in this, right? You're just getting these abilities, and it's not like you have a spell list. Like if you're a cleric, you have a giant list of spells. You got to pick which ones, and you can change them and stuff like that. You don't get that, right, in this system. Right, you just get your abilities, and you're not really supposed to swap out, that flexibility, which will be interesting to see how that works depending on what's going on as well, right? So, yeah, definitely some big differences from 5e system. I think it's going to be fun. I like tactical, and I think there's a lot of ways that players can be super creative here that you don't necessarily get in a 5e system, right? So yeah, this could really end up scratching a good itch. Let's see what happens when I go through the combat to try to explain that to my players and anyone else who's been watching this. And also, actually run a campaign. So I'm just going to draw up something quick and dirty and try to beat my head against the wall and see how it goes. I'm sure I'll stream it for posterity just to try and review it or whatever. But yeah, it definitely seems like a cool system. Definitely a different system. There's a lot of stuff out there today, and it's that time of year where all the systems come out. So let's try some new ones. That's it. All right, folks. Talk to you again soon. Bye.